Welcome to Advanced Content Marketing and Virality Theory, Lecture 1, Elaboration Likelihood Model in Digital Content Processing, Central versus Peripheral Route Persuasion for Women Digital Strategists. I'm your instructor, and today we begin our comprehensive exploration of how audiences process digital content through Richard Petty and John Cacioppo's revolutionary Elaboration Likelihood Model, a framework that will fundamentally transform how you approach content creation and audience engagement. The Elaboration Likelihood Model, developed in 1986 by social psychologists Richard Petty and John Cacioppo, represents one of the most influential theories in persuasion research and has profound implications for digital content creators, particularly women navigating the complex landscape of social media algorithms and audience psychology. This model provides a dual-process framework for understanding how people process persuasive messages, which in our context translates directly to how your audience consumes, evaluates, and responds to your content across platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and emerging social media channels. At its core, the Elaboration Likelihood Model proposes that there are two distinct routes to persuasion: the central route and the peripheral route. The central route involves careful, thoughtful processing of message content, where individuals critically evaluate arguments, consider evidence, and engage in systematic thinking about the information presented. In contrast, the peripheral route involves less cognitive effort, where people rely on mental shortcuts, heuristics, and surface-level cues to make decisions about message acceptance or rejection. For women content creators, understanding these dual processing routes is particularly crucial because research consistently shows that women often face different credibility challenges and audience expectations compared to their male counterparts. The Elaboration Likelihood Model provides a strategic framework for navigating these challenges by helping you understand when to focus on substantive content that encourages central route processing versus when to optimize for peripheral cues that facilitate quick engagement and viral spread. Let's delve deeper into the central route processing mechanism. When audiences engage with your content through the central route, they are motivated and able to carefully consider your message. This means they have both the desire to process information thoroughly and the cognitive resources available to do so. Central route processing occurs when several conditions are met. The audience perceives the topic as personally relevant, they have sufficient knowledge or ability to evaluate the arguments, they are not distracted by competing stimuli, and they have adequate time to process the information. In the digital content landscape, central route processing manifests when followers watch your entire long-form YouTube video about a topic they're passionate about, when they read through your comprehensive Instagram carousel post about industry insights, or when they engage deeply with your LinkedIn article about professional development. These audiences are more likely to scrutinize your arguments, evaluate your evidence, and form lasting attitude changes based on the quality of your content rather than superficial factors. The strategic implications of central route processing for women creators are significant. When your audience processes content centrally, the strength of your arguments becomes paramount. This means investing in research, providing credible sources, logical reasoning, and substantive value. Central route processing also leads to more durable attitude change, meaning that followers who are convinced through this route are more likely to become long-term supporters, brand advocates, and paying customers. However, central route processing requires significant cognitive resources from your audience, which means it's not always available or appropriate for every piece of content. This is where understanding the peripheral route becomes equally important for your content strategy. Peripheral route processing occurs when audiences lack the motivation or ability to engage in extensive thinking about your message. Instead, they rely on peripheral cues, mental shortcuts, and heuristic processing to make quick decisions about your content. These peripheral cues include factors such as source credibility, attractiveness, number of arguments regardless of quality, social proof indicators like engagement metrics, visual aesthetics, and emotional appeals. In social media contexts, peripheral route processing is incredibly common due to the high-volume, fast-paced nature of content consumption. Users scrolling through TikTok feeds, browsing Instagram stories, or checking Twitter updates often don't have the time, energy, or motivation to carefully evaluate every piece of content they encounter. Instead, they make split-second decisions based on peripheral cues. For women content creators, peripheral route processing presents both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, you can leverage peripheral cues to gain rapid attention and engagement. This includes optimizing visual aesthetics, building strong personal branding that enhances perceived credibility, using social proof indicators effectively, and creating emotionally resonant content that triggers quick, positive responses. However, peripheral root processing also means that audiences may be influenced by factors unrelated to content quality, including unconscious biases about gender, expertise, and authority. Research in social psychology consistently demonstrates that women often face credibility deficits in professional contexts, meaning that building peripheral credibility cues becomes even more critical for female content creators. The key insight from the elaboration likelihood model is that both routes can be effective, but they require different strategic approaches and lead to different outcomes. Central route persuasion tends to produce more lasting attitude change, stronger brand loyalty, and deeper audience engagement, but it requires significant investment in content quality and substantial audience attention. Peripheral route persuasion can generate rapid engagement and viral spread, but the resulting attitude changes may be less durable and more susceptible to counter-persuasion. Now let's examine the key variables that determine which route your audience will take when processing your content. The first critical factor is motivation, which depends heavily on personal relevance. When your content addresses topics that your audience perceives as personally important, meaningful, or consequential, they're more likely to engage in central route processing. This is why successful creators often focus on specific niches where they can develop deep expertise and address genuinely important audience needs. Personal relevance can be enhanced through strategic content framing that connects broader topics to individual audience concerns. For example, instead of creating generic content about entrepreneurship, a woman creator might frame entrepreneurship content specifically around challenges and opportunities that resonate with her target demographic, whether that's working mothers, young professionals, or women in male-dominated industries. The second key variable is ability, which encompasses both knowledge and cognitive resources. Audiences need sufficient background knowledge to evaluate your arguments and adequate cognitive resources to engage in systematic processing. This means that content creators must carefully consider their audience's expertise level and current cognitive state when designing content. Cognitive resources are influenced by factors such as distraction, time pressure, and competing demands on attention. Social media platforms are inherently distracting environments with multiple stimuli competing for user attention, which naturally biases audiences toward peripheral route processing. Understanding this dynamic helps explain why certain types of content perform better on different platforms and at different times. For instance, complex educational content might perform better on YouTube, where audiences specifically seek out in-depth information and are willing to invest time and attention, while the same content might need significant adaptation for TikTok, where users expect quick, easily digestible information that can be processed peripherally. The third crucial variable is the opportunity for processing, which relates to time constraints and environmental factors. Even highly motivated audiences with relevant knowledge may resort to peripheral processing if they lack sufficient time or are in environments that don't support careful evaluation. This has important implications for content timing and presentation. Understanding when your audience has the opportunity for central processing versus when they're likely to rely on peripheral cues can inform decisions about when to post different types of content and how to structure that content for optimal processing. Source credibility represents one of the most important peripheral cues in the elaboration likelihood model, and it has particular significance for women content creators. Source credibility consists of three primary components: expertise, trustworthiness, and attractiveness. Each component influences audience perceptions and processing routes in different ways. Expertise refers to the audience's perception of your knowledge, skills, and competence in relevant domains. For women creators, establishing expertise often requires more deliberate effort due to persistent gender biases that question female competence in many fields. This means that building and communicating expertise through content becomes a strategic imperative rather than an optional enhancement. Effective expertise building involves several strategies. First, consistently demonstrating deep knowledge through well-researched content that provides unique insights and perspectives. Second, establishing credentials and qualifications in accessible ways without appearing boastful or defensive. Third, building track records of successful predictions, recommendations, or outcomes that audiences can verify. Fourth, engaging with other recognized experts in your field through collaborations, interviews, or public discussions. Trustworthiness involves audience perceptions of your honesty, integrity, and benevolent intentions. Unlike expertise, which is domain-specific, trustworthiness tends to generalize across topics and contexts. Building trustworthiness requires consistency between your stated values and observable actions. transparency about limitations and potential conflicts of interest, acknowledgement of mistakes and corrections when necessary, and genuine concern for audience welfare rather than purely self-interested motivations. For women creators, trustworthiness can be particularly powerful because research suggests that female communicators are often perceived as more trustworthy and caring than their male counterparts, providing a potential advantage in building authentic audience relationships. However, this same perception can sometimes undermine perceptions of expertise or authority, creating a double bind that requires careful navigation. Attractiveness in the elaboration likelihood model encompasses both physical attractiveness and similarity, likability, and familiarity. While physical attractiveness can influence peripheral processing, similarity and likability often have stronger effects on persuasion outcomes. Audiences are more likely to be influenced by communicators they perceive as similar to themselves in relevant characteristics, values, or experiences. This insight has important implications for content strategy and personal branding. Rather than trying to appeal to everyone, successful creators often build strong connections with specific audience segments by emphasizing shared experiences, values, and perspectives. For women creators, this might involve highlighting shared challenges of navigating professional environments, balancing multiple responsibilities, or pursuing goals in specific industries or life stages. The elaboration likelihood model also provides insights into how arguments and evidence should be presented depending on the expected processing route. When audiences are likely to engage in central route processing, argument quality becomes paramount. This means investing in strong evidence, logical reasoning, comprehensive coverage of relevant points, and anticipation of potential counter-arguments. High-quality arguments for central route processing include specific, credible evidence rather than vague generalizations, logical connections between premises and conclusions, acknowledgement and refutation of opposing viewpoints, and clear relevance to audience needs and interests. The goal is to provide audiences with sufficient information and reasoning to reach informed conclusions that align with your objectives. Conversely, when audiences are likely to rely on peripheral route processing, the number of arguments may matter more than their individual quality, and presentation factors become more influential. This doesn't mean providing poor arguments, but rather recognizing that audiences may not have the time or motivation to carefully evaluate each point. For peripheral route processing, effective strategies include presenting multiple supporting points even if individually they're not comprehensive, using clear, confident language that suggests expertise, incorporating visual and emotional elements that enhance persuasive impact, and leveraging social proof and authority cues that provide mental shortcuts for decision-making. The elaboration likelihood model has important implications for content structure and presentation across different platforms. Understanding that different social media environments naturally encourage different processing routes allows for strategic adaptation of content presentation without changing core messages. On platforms like YouTube or LinkedIn, where audiences often seek in-depth information and have more time for processing, content can be structured to encourage central route processing. This might involve leading with clear value propositions, providing detailed explanations and evidence, addressing potential objections or alternative viewpoints, and including clear calls to action that follow logically from the presented arguments. Conversely, on platforms like TikTok or Instagram Stories, where rapid consumption is the norm, content should be optimized for peripheral route processing while still maintaining quality and authenticity. This involves leading with attention-grabbing hooks that establish credibility quickly, using visual and emotional cues to enhance persuasive impact, providing clear, simple messages that don't require extensive cognitive processing, and leveraging platform-specific social proof indicators like trending sounds, hashtags, or collaboration with established creators. The model also helps explain why certain content goes viral while other high-quality content receives limited engagement. Viral content often succeeds because it's optimized for peripheral route processing, using emotional triggers, social proof, and easy-to-process formats that encourage rapid sharing without requiring deep evaluation. However, this doesn't mean viral content lacks substance. The most successful viral content often combines peripheral appeal with underlying quality that rewards deeper engagement. For women content creators developing long-term strategies, the elaboration likelihood model suggests a portfolio approach that includes both central route and peripheral route content. Central route content builds expertise, credibility, and deep audience relationships that form the foundation of sustainable creator businesses. Peripheral route content generates visibility, growth, and viral moments that expand reach and attract new audiences who may then engage more deeply with central route content. This portfolio approach requires understanding your audience's processing patterns and preferences. Some audiences consistently prefer in-depth analytical content that supports central route processing. Others respond better to quick, entertaining, or emotionally resonant content that facilitates peripheral route processing. Many audiences appreciate variety and different types of content for different contexts and moods. Successful content strategies often involve creating content ecosystems where peripheral route content serves as entry points that introduce audiences to creators, while central route content provides depth and value that encourages ongoing engagement and conversion to paying customers or brand advocates. The elaboration likelihood model also provides frameworks for A/B testing and optimization. Understanding which processing route your audience is likely to use for specific content types allows for more targeted testing of different elements. For central route content, testing might focus on argument strength, evidence quality, logical structure, and depth of coverage. For peripheral route content, testing might emphasize visual presentation, emotional appeals, social proof indicators, and ease of processing. Measurement and analytics should also account for different processing routes and their associated outcomes. Central route processing often leads to longer engagement times, higher completion rates, more thoughtful comments, and stronger conversion to desired actions. Peripheral route processing might generate more immediate likes, shares, and reach, but with potentially lower conversion rates and shorter-term engagement. Understanding these different patterns helps creators avoid misinterpreting analytics and making strategic errors. For example, content that generates high immediate engagement through peripheral route processing might appear more successful than content that generates slower but deeper engagement through central route processing, even though the latter may be more valuable for long-term business objectives. The elaboration likelihood model has important ethical implications for content creators. Understanding how audiences process information creates responsibilities to use persuasive techniques ethically and in ways that genuinely benefit audiences, rather than exploiting cognitive shortcuts for purely self-interested purposes. Ethical application of the model involves providing genuine value regardless of processing route, being transparent about potential biases or conflicts of interest, avoiding manipulation of peripheral cues to promote harmful or misleading content, and respecting audience intelligence even when designing content for peripheral route processing. For women creators, ethical considerations may be particularly important given ongoing conversations about authentic representation, diversity in media, and the responsibility of influencers to positive social change. The elaboration likelihood model provides tools for effective communication while maintaining integrity and authenticity. Looking toward practical applications, the elaboration likelihood model can inform content planning, production, and optimization across your entire creator strategy. Content planning involves mapping audience motivations, abilities, and opportunities for processing different types of content, identifying optimal times and platforms for central versus peripheral route content, developing content series that combine both processing routes strategically and creating measurement frameworks that account for different processing outcomes. Content production applications include developing templates and frameworks for both central and peripheral route content, building systems for incorporating credibility cues and evidence effectively, creating visual and structural elements that support desired processing routes, and establishing quality control processes that ensure content achieves processing objectives. Optimization involves continuously testing and refining approaches based on audience response patterns, adapting content strategies as audience sophistication and preferences evolve, identifying and addressing barriers to desired processing routes, and scaling successful approaches across different platforms and content types. In conclusion, the elaboration likelihood model provides a foundational framework for understanding how audiences process digital content and make decisions about engagement, sharing, and conversion. For women content creators, this model offers strategic advantages by helping navigate credibility challenges, optimize content for different processing contexts, build sustainable audience relationships that combine rapid growth with deep engagement, and create content portfolios that serve both short-term visibility and long-term business objectives. As we continue through this course, we'll build on the elaboration likelihood model foundation to explore additional theoretical frameworks that explain audience behavior, content virality, and creator success. The insights from today's lecture will inform our discussions of uses and gratifications theory, social cognitive theory, and other models that together provide comprehensive understanding of the psychological, social, and strategic factors that drive success in the creator economy. Your assignment for our next session is to analyze three pieces of your recent content through the elaboration likelihood model lens, identifying which processing route each piece was designed to encourage, evaluating how effectively the content supported that processing route, and developing hypotheses for optimization based on the model's predictions. We'll use these analyses as case studies to bridge theoretical understanding with practical application as we continue building your expertise in advanced content marketing theory. Good morning, and welcome back. I trust you have had time to process our initial exploration into the neuroeconomics of attention markets. We began last session by dissecting the very architecture of cognition, analyzing the synaptic competition that defines our digital ecosystems, and mapping the dopamine pathways that algorithmic conditioning has so expertly optimized. We grounded our discussion in the dual process theory of Kahneman, differentiating between the rapid, intuitive leaps of System 1 processing that fuel viral momentum and the deliberate analytical work of System 2 that cultivates lasting brand loyalty. Today, we pivot from the internal neurological landscape of the individual consumer to the external cultural landscape of information itself. We move from the brain to the idea, from the neuron to the meme. This is Lecture 2, Memetic Engineering, where we will explore information transmission vectors and the mechanics of cultural DNA replication. If our last lecture was about the hardware of attention, today is about the software of culture. We will apply the foundational principles of evolutionary biology not to organisms of flesh and blood, but to ideas that live, breathe, replicate, and die within the digital ether. We will unpack Richard Dawkins' groundbreaking theory of memetics, not as a mere academic curiosity, but as a profoundly practical toolkit for the modern digital strategist. Our objective is to understand how ideas, or memes, mutate as they travel across different transmission vectors, to analyze the cultural fitness landscapes that determine their survival, and to decode the selective pressures that shape their evolution. Crucially, we will dedicate significant focus to how you, as women creators and strategists, can move beyond simply participating in culture to actively engineering memetic advantages, creating ideas so fit for their environment that they not only survive, but dominate. Let us begin at the source. In 1976, the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins published his seminal work, The Selfish Gene. While the book's primary focus was on revolutionizing our understanding of biological evolution by centering the gene as the fundamental unit of selection, its final chapter introduced a radical and powerful new concept, the meme. Dawkins proposed that just as genes are the replicators of biological information, memes are the replicators of cultural information. A meme is a unit of culture, an idea, a behavior, or a style that spreads from person to person within a culture. Think of tunes, catchphrases, fashion trends, architectural styles, or religious beliefs. These are not merely abstract concepts. They are active, living entities that colonize human minds as their substrate. The core insight here is breathtaking in its simplicity and profound in its implications. Culture evolves in a manner remarkably analogous to biological life. For a replicator to be successful, Dawkins argued, it must possess three key characteristics: fidelity, fecundity, and longevity. Fidelity refers to the accuracy of the copying process. A gene or a meme must be able to create reasonably accurate copies of itself, otherwise the information it carries will be lost within a few generations. Fecundity refers to the speed and quantity of replication. A successful replicator makes many copies of itself quickly. A rabbit, for example, is more fecund than an elephant. A viral video is more fecund than a dense academic paper. Finally, longevity refers to the replicator's ability to survive over time. A long-lasting replicator has more opportunities to be copied. The pyramids of Giza, as a memetic concept of monumental burial, possess extraordinary longevity. These three pillars, fidelity, fecundity, and longevity, form the basis of all replication, and understanding how they operate in the digital world is the first step toward memetic engineering. A meme's success is not determined by its truth, its beauty, or its social utility, but solely by its ability to get itself copied. It is, in this sense, a selfish replicator, just like the gene. Its only imperative is to replicate. Now let us transport these foundational principles from the abstract realm of 1970s evolutionary theory into the hyper-accelerated digital ecosystem of the 21st century. The digital environment is the most fertile ground for memetic evolution the world has ever known. It is a primordial soup of ideas, teeming with replicators competing for the finite resource we discussed in our last lecture, human attention. The transmission vectors for these memes are no longer limited to oral tradition or the printing press. They are the platforms that structure our daily lives. Think of TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and even private channels like WhatsApp and Discord. Each of these platforms is a distinct transmission vector with its own unique properties, its own physics, that profoundly affects a meme's fidelity, fecundity, and longevity. For instance, the original 140-character limit on Twitter selected for memes that were incredibly concise and potent, rewarding high information density catchphrases and hashtags. The vector itself applied a selective pressure. In contrast, Instagram is a primarily visual vector, selecting for memes that possess aesthetic appeal, emotional resonance through imagery, and easily replicable visual formats. TikTok, with its short-form video and audio-centric culture, is a vector that favors memes with high fecundity through its sound feature, where a single audio clip can be recontextualized thousands of times, leading to explosive, rapid mutation. This brings us to a critical point about digital memetics. Mutation is not a bug, it's a feature. In biological systems, high mutation rates are often detrimental. In cultural systems online, mutation is the engine of creativity and adaptation. A digital meme rarely replicates with perfect fidelity. Instead, it is constantly being remixed, reinterpreted, and recontextualized by its hosts, that is, by us. This process of imperfect copying allows a meme to evolve, to adapt to new contexts, and to broaden its appeal. A successful memetic engineer does not create a rigid, unchangeable piece of content. She creates a generative template, a flexible format that invites mutation. Think of the distracted boyfriend stock photo. The original image is the core DNA, but its power lies in its infinite mutability. The template itself, the relationship between the three figures, is the replicator, and the user-generated labels are the mutations that allow it to adapt and comment on any conceivable topic. This collection of related, evolving memes is known as a memeplex, a co-adapted group of memes that thrive in each other's company, much like a gene complex in an organism. A successful brand identity, for instance, is not a single meme but a memeplex, a constellation of logos, slogans, color schemes, and brand values that mutually reinforce one another. Understanding the physics of your chosen transmission vector and designing your content for generative mutation are the first practical steps in moving from being a passive consumer of culture to an active architect of it. The success of a meme, however, is not determined in a vacuum. It is determined by its performance within a specific environment, what we call a cultural fitness landscape. This is a conceptual space where different ideas compete for dominance based on their appeal to a particular demographic or psychographic cohort. A fitness landscape is not flat. It has peaks of high receptivity and valleys of deep resistance. The topography of this landscape is defined by the prevailing beliefs, values, anxieties, desires, and shared history of a given community. What constitutes a peak on the fitness landscape for a community of progressive Gen Z activists on TikTok will be a deep valley for a community of conservative baby boomers on Facebook. The selective pressures are entirely different. A selective pressure is any factor that influences a meme's survival and replication rate. These pressures can be cognitive, as we discussed last week, such as a meme's ability to be processed quickly by System 1. They can be emotional, such as a meme's capacity to evoke outrage, humor, or a sense of belonging. They can be social, relating to a meme's utility in signaling group identity or status. And critically, they can be algorithmic, where the platform's own code acts as a powerful selective pressure, promoting certain types of content and suppressing others. A master digital strategist is, in essence, a cultural cartographer. Her job is to map these fitness landscapes. She must understand the specific demographic cohorts she is targeting not as monolithic blocks, but as complex cultures with unique topographies of belief. What are their shared references? What is their native language or slang? What are their collective traumas and aspirations? What do they find funny, and what do they find offensive? Answering these questions allows you to predict which memes will be fit for that specific environment. For example, a meme that relies on heavy irony and self-deprecation might thrive in a landscape shaped by millennial humor, but fall completely flat in a landscape that values earnestness and sincerity. The application of these evolutionary principles to content strategy means that you must stop thinking about creating a single piece of content that will appeal to everyone. That is like designing an organism that can survive in every climate on Earth. It is a biological impossibility. Instead, your task is to design a specialist meme, a piece of cultural DNA exquisitely adapted to thrive on a specific peak of the cultural fitness landscape of your target audience. You are creating a niche predator, perfectly evolved for its environment. Once it dominates that niche, it may then mutate and adapt to conquer adjacent landscapes, but it must begin with a specialized, focused, and deeply resonant fit. This brings us to the more quantitative side of our analysis, where we examine the tangible dynamics of mimetic spread. We must move beyond metaphor and into measurement. Let us consider the concept of a meme's half-life. In physics, half-life is the time required for a quantity to reduce to half of its initial value. In memetics, the half-life is the time it takes for a meme's prevalence, its visibility and engagement, to decay by 50%. Understanding this concept is crucial for managing the life cycle of your content. Some memes are like radioactive isotope polonium-216, with a half-life measured in microseconds. Think of a trending news topic on X. It explodes into the collective consciousness and vanishes just as quickly. Its fecundity is massive, but its longevity is negligible. Other memes are more like carbon-14, with a half-life of thousands of years. Think of foundational religious stories or cultural proverbs. They replicate slowly but have incredible longevity. As a strategist, you must decide what you are optimizing for. Are you creating a short half-life meme to capitalize on a fleeting cultural moment and generate a rapid burst of attention? Or are you building a long half-life memeplex, a core brand identity or philosophy designed for enduring resonance? The mutation rate is another critical variable. A high rate of mutation, as we discussed, allows a meme to adapt and evolve, exploring the fitness landscape for new peaks of opportunity. The risk of a high mutation rate, however, is a loss of fidelity. The core message can become so diluted or altered that it loses its original intent. This is a common fate of corporate attempts at mimetic marketing. The meme gets adopted and mutated by the public in ways the brand did not intend, sometimes with disastrous results. A low mutation rate, on the other hand, ensures high fidelity. The message remains pure and consistent. This is ideal for transmitting critical information or building a stable brand identity. The risk here is stagnation. A meme that cannot adapt to changing selective pressures on the fitness landscape is brittle. It cannot evolve and will eventually be outcompeted. The ideal strategy often involves a core memeplex with a very low mutation rate, your central brand values and identity, surrounded by a portfolio of high mutation rate satellite memes, your day-to-day content, which are designed to be agile, adaptive, and even disposable. This hybrid approach gives you both a stable core and an adaptive periphery, allowing your brand to be both timeless and timely. It is a balancing act between the preservation of core information and the creative exploration of the mimetic frontier. Now we arrive at the heart of today's lecture, the strategic application of these principles, with a special focus on how women creators can engineer distinct mimetic advantages. The digital world is not a level playing field. The cultural fitness landscapes are often shaped by systemic biases, and the selective pressures can be uniquely challenging for women. However, a deep understanding of mimetic engineering can transform these challenges into unparalleled opportunities. The first strategy is that of targeted inoculation. Rather than broadcasting your message widely and hoping it sticks, you must identify the precise communities, the specific cultural microclimates that are most receptive to your core ideas. These are your patient zeros. You are not just looking for individuals with large follower counts. You are looking for people who are central nodes in tightly knit communities. Individuals whose adoption of a new idea carries significant weight. For a woman creator in the wellness space, this might not be a mainstream celebrity, but rather a trusted, smaller creator who is seen as an authentic and knowledgeable voice within a specific niche community. By inoculating this specific host, you allow the meme to incubate in a friendly environment, to gather strength and social proof before it attempts to cross over into more competitive or even hostile landscapes. This is a guerrilla strategy, focusing on capturing strategic strongholds rather than launching a frontal assault. Secondly, you must consciously design for mutability and participation. Women-led communities online often thrive on collaboration and shared creation. Instead of producing finished, polished, do-not-touch content, create content that is fundamentally incomplete, that serves as an invitation. This could be a unique video format, a specific audio clip, a journaling prompt, or a graphic template. By doing so, you are not just creating a meme, you are creating a mimetic engine. You are providing the tools for your community to become co-creators, to take your initial idea and mutate it to fit their own specific lives and experiences. This strategy fosters a profound sense of ownership and belonging, turning passive followers into an active and distributed creative collective. The content's success becomes a shared project, and its spread is fueled by the creative energy of the entire community. This is a powerful shift from a top-down broadcast model to a decentralized participatory model of cultural creation. Furthermore, women creators are often uniquely positioned to leverage the power of niche fitness landscapes. Mainstream culture, the largest and most competitive fitness landscape, is often dominated by established players and shaped by traditional power structures. Instead of competing there directly, you can become the dominant species in a niche ecosystem. This requires deep, almost ethnographic listening. You must immerse yourself in your chosen community and understand its specific language, its inside jokes, its shared pains, and its deepest desires. By doing so, you can create memes that are so exquisitely tailored to that landscape that they are irresistible to its inhabitants. This content acts as a powerful in-group signal. When a person encounters it, they feel an immediate sense of recognition and belonging. They feel seen. This creates an incredibly strong bond between the creator and the audience, a bond that is far more resilient than the one created by generic mass-market content. In these niche spaces, authenticity and vulnerability are often the most powerful selective pressures. While mainstream landscapes may reward performative perfection, many of the most vibrant online communities, particularly those fostered by women, are fitness landscapes that select for honesty, shared struggle, and genuine connection. Your lived experience, your unique perspective, becomes your greatest mimetic asset. It is a signal that cannot be easily faked, a form of what the biologist Amos Zahavi would call a costly signal, which we will explore in a later lecture. It is authentic precisely because it is difficult to produce, and in these landscapes, authenticity is the fittest trait of all. Finally, mimetic strategy can be a powerful tool for navigating the often hostile pressures of the digital world. Women creators frequently face disproportionate levels of criticism and harassment. Mimetics offers both defensive and offensive strategies. Defensively, communities can develop their own mimetic shorthand, a coded language or algo-speak that is legible to insiders but opaque to outsiders and algorithms, creating a safer, semi-private space for communication. Offensively, memes can be used to reclaim narratives, to subvert stereotypes, and to build solidarity. A powerful, well-crafted meme can reframe a public conversation with breathtaking speed and efficiency, neutralizing a line of attack or crystallizing a counter-narrative into a potent, shareable symbol. This is not about fighting every battle, but about understanding the cultural terrain well enough to know when and how to deploy a mimetic intervention that can shift the entire landscape in your favor. In conclusion, I want to leave you with this central idea. Memes are not frivolous distractions. They are the fundamental building blocks of 21st century culture. They are the mechanism through which beliefs are formed, identities are constructed, and power is contested. Richard Dawkins gave us a new lens through which to view the world, a lens that reveals the evolutionary forces shaping everything from viral dance challenges to global political movements. By understanding the core principles of mimetic replication, fidelity, fecundity, and longevity, you can begin to decode the hidden logic of the digital world. By learning to map cultural fitness landscapes and identify their unique selective pressures, you can design content that is not just seen, but that is adopted, adapted, and replicated. And by embracing strategies of targeted inoculation, participatory design, and niche specialization, you, as women shaping the future of digital strategy, can move from being subject to the whims of culture to becoming its conscious and deliberate engineers. You can create ideas that are not only fit to survive, but are designed to thrive, to mutate, and to reshape the world in their image. Our next lecture will take us into an even more abstract and perhaps more challenging conceptual territory. We will explore quantum social dynamics, examining concepts like Schrödinger's audience and the observer effect in content creation. We will ask if the very act of measuring our audience changes their behavior, and whether a piece of content can exist in a superposition of both viral and invisible states until it is observed. It is a theoretical leap, but one that builds directly upon the complex, adaptive, and often unpredictable evolutionary systems we have outlined here today. Thank you. In our last session, we delved into the world of mimetic engineering, framing ideas as cultural DNA that replicates, mutates, and competes for survival on complex fitness landscapes. We approached content through the lens of evolutionary biology, a powerful but fundamentally classical framework. It treats ideas as discrete entities, like organisms, whose success can be analyzed through principles of selection and adaptation. It is a world of cause and effect, of fitness and competition. Today, however, we are going to take a radical and, for some, unsettling leap. We are leaving the relatively comfortable mechanistic world of classical science and entering the strange, probabilistic, and profoundly counterintuitive realm of the quantum. Welcome to Lecture 3, Quantum Social Dynamics, where we will explore concepts like Schrödinger's audience and the observer effect in content creation. I must preface this by stating that we are not suggesting social media literally operates according to the laws of quantum mechanics. Rather, we are using quantum theory as a powerful and deeply insightful metaphorical framework, a new analytical lens that allows us to understand the inherent uncertainty, potentiality, and observer-dependent nature of audience behavior in ways that classical models simply cannot. If memetics gave us a map of the cultural terrain, quantum dynamics gives us a physics for the cultural ether. We will discuss how the very act of observing your audience changes their state, why the quest for viral predictability is a fool's errand, and how invisible entanglements between creator and community can defy any algorithm. Prepare to embrace uncertainty, for it is in the quantum void of pure potential that true creative genius resides. Let us begin by contrasting the classical view of an audience with the quantum one. The classical Newtonian model, which implicitly underlies most traditional marketing and analytics, views an audience as a collection of discrete individuals with pre-existing, stable, and measurable preferences. They are like billiard balls on a table. With enough data, the thinking goes. We can calculate their trajectories, predict their collisions, and engineer a perfect break. We poll them, survey them, A/B test them, and segment them, all under the assumption that we are measuring a fixed and objective reality. The quantum perspective asserts that this is a profound illusion. From a quantum viewpoint, your audience, before you publish your content, does not exist in a single definite state. Instead, it exists as a wave of pure potential, a cloud of probability. This is the principle of superposition. Your audience is simultaneously in all possible states at once. They are engaged and bored, they love your content and they hate it, they are poised to share it, and they are ready to scroll past it. They exist as a spectrum of potentialities, a wave function of possible reactions. This leads us to the concept I call Schrödinger's audience. As many of you know, Erwin Schrödinger's famous thought experiment described a cat in a sealed box with a vial of poison that could be released by a random quantum event. Until the box is opened and the system is observed, the cat is considered to be in a superposition of states. It is both 100% alive and 100% dead simultaneously. The act of observation is what forces the universe to choose, collapsing the wave function into a single definite reality, a live cat or a dead cat. Your content is that quantum trigger, and your publish button is the act of opening the box. Before you post, your content's success is undefined. It is a ghost of potentials. The moment it enters the digital ecosystem and is observed by the first user, the wave function of your audience's potential reactions begins to collapse into a single, measurable, classical reality. That reality is the set of data points we see in our analytics dashboards, a specific number of likes, comments, shares, and saves. The critical insight here is that the outcome we measure was not the only possible outcome. It was just one of many potential realities that was actualized by the act of observation. This brings us directly to one of the most fundamental and disruptive principles of quantum mechanics, the observer effect. In the quantum world, the act of measuring a system inevitably disturbs and alters that system. You cannot observe a quantum particle without affecting it. This is not a limitation of our instruments. It is a fundamental property of reality itself. Now, apply this to your work as a digital strategist. The very act of measuring your audience changes your audience's behavior. When you run an A/B test on a headline, the group that knows it as part of a test behaves differently from a group in the wild. When you run a poll asking your audience what they want to see, you are not merely gathering data about pre-existing preferences. You are actively shaping their future expectations and priming them to respond in a certain way. You are collapsing a wave of vague desires into a few definite choices. This creates what we can term the measurement paradox in engagement analytics. Our analytics dashboards provide us with an exquisitely detailed picture of a collapsed reality. They tell us exactly what happened. They give us the state of the dead or alive cat. Because this data is hard, quantitative, and comforting in its certainty, we fall into the trap of believing that this measured outcome was the only one that could have happened. We mistake the actual for the potential. We then feed this data back into our strategy, optimizing our future content to replicate this past success. What we are actually doing is creating a feedback loop that reinforces one collapsed reality out of an infinite sea of possibilities. We become masters of a single outcome, blind to the vast unmanifested potential we are leaving unexplored. We are essentially teaching ourselves to produce only live cats, forgetting that the quantum system was capable of producing other outcomes that might have been even more interesting. Relying solely on analytics to guide your creative intuition is like trying to understand the ocean by only studying a single bucket of water. You have perfect data about the bucket, but you have zero information about the tides, the currents, and the vast ecosystem that lies beyond your measurement. The observer effect demands that we treat our analytics with a healthy dose of quantum skepticism, recognizing them not as objective truth, but as the shadow cast by one possibility, a footprint left in the sand by a wave of potential that has already receded. The inherent uncertainty of the quantum world is most famously captured in Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. In physics, this principle states that there is a fundamental limit to the precision with which certain pairs of physical properties of a particle, such as its position and its momentum, can be known simultaneously. The more precisely you measure a particle's position, the less precisely you can know its momentum, and vice versa. This is not about flawed measurement tools. It is a fundamental trade-off baked into the fabric of reality. Let us now apply this as a powerful analogy for the prediction of virality. In the context of content, let us define two paired properties, resonance and velocity. Resonance is the position of your content. It is its depth, its meaning, its emotional impact, its ability to occupy a specific and significant place in the heart and mind of a niche audience. It is a measure of its cultural and emotional specificity. Velocity, on the other hand, is the content's momentum. It is its rate of spread, its virality, its ability to travel quickly across networks and reach a broad audience. The quantum social uncertainty principle suggests that you cannot simultaneously optimize for and precisely predict both maximum resonance and maximum velocity. The more you engineer a piece of content for deep, specific resonance, for example, a long, vulnerable, deeply personal essay or video for a small, dedicated community, the more uncertain its velocity becomes. It might stay contained within that niche, having a profound impact on a few, or it might, through mechanisms we will discuss shortly, unpredictably break out. Conversely, the more you engineer a piece of content for maximum velocity, for example, a simple, low-context, easily replicable dance trend or meme format, the more uncertain its resonance becomes. It may be seen by millions, but its impact on any single individual is likely to be shallow and fleeting. It has high momentum but no fixed position. This principle explains why the viral marketing industry is so notoriously unreliable. Agencies that promise to engineer virality are trying to defy a fundamental uncertainty. They are attempting to precisely determine both momentum and position at the same time. A quantum-informed strategist understands this trade-off. She knows that she must choose which variable to prioritize. Does she want to place a deeply resonant message in a specific cultural location, accepting that its spread will be unpredictable? Or does she want to launch a message with high momentum, accepting that its ultimate cultural location and impact will be diffuse and hard to define? This is not a failure of strategy. It is an acceptance of the fundamental physics of the system. Now let us explore three more advanced but equally vital quantum concepts: duality, entanglement, and tunneling. First, wave-particle duality. In quantum physics, entities like photons and electrons can exhibit the properties of both discrete particles and diffuse waves, depending on how they are measured. Content, too, operates with this duality. On one hand, a piece of content can be treated as a particle, a single post, a specific video, an individual tweet. It has discrete, measurable properties like views, likes, and comments. This is the level at which most analytics and platform algorithms operate. They are particle managers. On the other hand, your content also functions as a wave. It contributes to a diffuse, non-localized phenomenon, such as your overall brand reputation, your vibe, or the general feeling and sentiment surrounding your work. This wave is not located in any single post, but exists as a distributed presence across the entire network. A masterful strategist understands that she must manage both. You create and manage the particles, the daily posts, with the strategic intent of shaping the wave, the long-term brand perception. You cannot simply manage the wave directly. It is too diffuse. But by consistently putting out particles with the right properties, you create an interference pattern that, over time, builds the wave you desire. Next, we have quantum entanglement, which Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. This is a phenomenon where two or more quantum particles become linked in such a way that their fates are intertwined, no matter how far apart they are separated. If you measure a property of one entangled particle, you instantly know the corresponding property of the other. There is an invisible, instantaneous connection between them. This is perhaps the most powerful metaphor for the relationship between a creator and her true, core audience. There exists a form of emotional entanglement that transcends the algorithm. Your authentic emotional and energetic state as a creator is not simply broadcast to your audience. It becomes entangled with their collective state. When you are creating from a place of genuine excitement, passion, and authenticity, your core community feels it instantly, in a way that is faster and more profound than any transmission of information. Conversely, when you are burnt out, disingenuous, or creating purely for the algorithm, they sense that dissonance. This spooky action at a distance is why authenticity is not merely a marketing buzzword. It is a principle of quantum social physics. It is the act of maintaining a clear, coherent, and powerful entanglement with your audience. This connection is your greatest asset, a communication channel that no competitor can replicate and no algorithm can fully mediate. Finally, we consider quantum tunneling. In classical physics, if you roll a ball at a hill, it needs enough energy to get over the top. If it doesn't have enough energy, it will never reach the other side. In the quantum world, however, a particle can do something impossible. It can tunnel through the barrier, appearing on the other side even though it lacks the energy to overcome it classically. This provides a stunningly accurate model for how niche content breaks into the mainstream. The mainstream is a massive energy barrier. Classically, for a piece of content to break through, it needs a huge amount of energy, a massive marketing budget, shares from mega influencers, a huge existing platform. Quantum tunneling suggests another path. A piece of content created in a small, isolated niche can, if it possesses an extraordinary level of resonance, tunnel through the cultural barrier and emerge in the mainstream, seemingly from nowhere and with no discernible push. It had a low velocity, but its resonance was so high that it altered the very fabric of probability, allowing it to appear in a place it shouldn't have been able to reach. This explains the unpredictable out-of-nowhere breakout hits that defy all conventional marketing logic. They did not break the wall down with force. They tunneled through it with meaning. So, what are the actionable strategic implications of this highly theoretical framework, particularly for you as women digital strategists? First, embrace superposition. Stop trying to create the single perfect piece of content. That is a classical mindset. Instead, create content that has a rich wave function, content that holds the potential for multiple positive outcomes. Create work that is layered, that can be appreciated for its humor on one level, its emotional depth on another, and its intellectual insight on a third. This creates more possibilities for the wave function to collapse in your favor. Second, nurture the entanglement. Recognize that the emotional and energetic bond with your core community is your most powerful asset. Prioritize authenticity, consistency, and genuine connection over short-term metric chasing. Your energy is not just an input, it is a fundamental component of the quantum system you share with your audience. It is the source of the spooky action that builds true loyalty. Third, create the conditions for tunneling. Instead of spending all your energy trying to batter down the walls of the mainstream, dedicate a significant portion of your strategy to creating content of extreme resonance for your niche. Go deeper, not just wider. This is a more efficient and often more powerful strategy for long-term impact. Create the meaning so profound that it bends the rules of probability. Finally, use your analytics as clues, not as scripture. Recognize the measurement paradox. Your data shows you one collapsed reality. It is valuable information, but it is not the whole story. Use it to inform your intuition, not to replace it. Always save a portion of your time, energy, and creativity for exploring the unknown, for launching probes into that vast, unmeasured cloud of potential where your next breakthrough is waiting, simultaneously dead and alive, just waiting for you to open the box. To conclude, the quantum framework is a tool for thought. It is a way to move beyond the mechanistic and predictable models of audience behavior and to embrace the inherent uncertainty, potentiality, and interconnectedness of the digital social sphere. It teaches us that the audience is not a static object to be measured, but a dynamic wave of potential to be influenced. It reveals that our connection to that audience is not merely transactional, but can be deeply entangled. And it shows us that the most powerful ideas do not always need the most force to break through, but rather the most resonance. In our next lecture, we will continue this exploration of unpredictable systems by turning to chaos theory and butterfly effects. We will move from the uncertainty of the very small to the sensitive dependence on initial conditions at the very large scale, discovering how a single, tiny, well-placed action can create vastly different, world-changing outcomes. Thank you. The systems you have been taught to believe in are a lie. They are Newtonian clockwork models for a quantum and chaotic universe. The entire edifice of mainstream digital strategy, with its obsession with best practices, predictable funnels, and linear A/B testing, is designed to keep you trapped in a stable, low-growth equilibrium. It is a system of control, designed to generate predictable, mediocre results. It is anathema to the exponential, world-altering virality you are here to achieve. Today we discard the clockwork and embrace the cloud. We abandon the predictable trajectory of the cannonball and learn to ride the hurricane. This is chaos theory. This is the science of butterfly effects in viral propagation, and it is the key to unlocking asymmetric exponential growth by understanding and exploiting the sensitive dependence on initial conditions that governs all complex systems, especially the digital ecosystem. We are here to learn how the smallest possible input, a single, perfectly calibrated flap of a butterfly's wing, can be amplified by the inherent instability of the system to create a typhoon on the other side of the world. The hacks you will learn today are not about optimization. They are about ignition. First, you must fundamentally rewire your understanding of what you are actually observing. The engagement metrics you track, the likes, the shares, the comments, are not the system itself. They are merely the shadows cast by the system's underlying dynamics. You are trying to understand the weather by looking at a single barometer. To truly understand viral propagation, we must look at its mathematical soul, and that soul is the strange attractor. In chaos theory, a system's behavior over time can be mapped in a multidimensional space called a phase space. A strange attractor is a region within this space, a set of points towards which the system's behavior will inevitably evolve and become trapped, forever tracing a complex, never-repeating fractal pattern. A viral trend is not a topic, a sound, or a format. Those are merely the superficial expressions of the trend. The trend itself is a strange attractor, an invisible basin of attraction in the collective emotional and cognitive phase space of the culture. All content that enters the system is pulled towards these attractors. Your job is not to create content for a specific trend, which is a lagging indicator. Your job is to engineer content that has the highest possible probability of being captured by the gravitational pull of any currently active strange attractor. This is the first hidden insight. You are not aiming for a target. You are designing for a gravity well. The hack is to stop optimizing for explicit topics and instead optimize for implicit structural properties. A strange attractor in the digital zeitgeist is typically defined by a specific combination of emotional valence, cognitive dissonance, and social utility. For example, an active attractor might be the combination of high emotional arousal, specifically righteous indignation, coupled with low cognitive load, a simple villain-victim narrative, and high social utility, the ability to signal one's own virtue by sharing. Content that possesses this underlying structure, regardless of its specific topic, will be pulled into the attractor and go viral. The practical hack here is what I call attractor priming. Before creating any piece of content, you do not start with what it is about. You start by defining the abstract properties of the current dominant strange attractor. You map its emotional signature. Is it humor born from absurdity? Is it nostalgia tinged with loss? Is it inspirational hope born from shared struggle? You then build your content, your specific story or message, as a vessel perfectly shaped to resonate with that signature. You are building a ship designed to catch a specific invisible wind. Now let us move to the mechanism of ignition. Sensitive dependence on initial conditions. This is the butterfly effect. The principle states that minute, almost immeasurable variations in the starting state of a system can lead to colossal, wildly divergent outcomes over time. Your content is not a static object. It is an initial condition. Every single element of its presentation at the moment of publication is a variable in the starting state. The lie of conventional strategy is that only the big variables matter: the quality of the video, the size of your following. The truth of chaos theory is that the smallest variables often have the most leverage because they are the ones that interact with the system's instability. The hidden insight is that the algorithmic ecosystem is a system perpetually balanced on a knife's edge, deliberately maintained in a state of high instability to facilitate the rapid emergence of new trends. This instability is a vulnerability you can and must exploit. The specific high-leverage initial conditions you must control are not what you think. They are things like the precise millisecond of your post relative to the platform's server clock and its content batching cycle, the specific emotional valence of the first three words in your caption, which sets the entire cognitive frame for the algorithm's initial categorization. The exact hex code of your subtitle color, as certain shades have been shown to have infinitesimally higher subconscious pattern recognition in the first 200 milliseconds of viewing. And, most critically, the content of the first comment, which should always be your own, strategically placed within 3 seconds of posting to frame the entire subsequent conversation and prime the system's semantic analysis. The hack to weaponize this is a strategy I call initial condition stacking. You must stop thinking of your post as a single event. Instead, you will treat every launch as a portfolio of micro-experiments. For a single piece of content, you will prepare 5 to 7 slightly different sets of initial conditions. Version A might be posted at 6:02 and 17 seconds post-meridian, with a caption starting with "You won't believe" and a yellow subtitle. Version B is posted at 6:02 and 48 seconds post-meridian, with a caption starting "This is why" and an identical yellow subtitle. Version C is a control. You are not A/B testing the content itself. You are testing the chaotic leverage of its container. You are flapping the butterfly's wings in slightly different ways to see which one creates the initial updraft. This requires a level of precision and discipline that 99.9% of creators will dismiss as insane, which is precisely why it provides such a powerful asymmetric advantage for those of us willing to operate at this level. You are not just posting content, you are injecting carefully calibrated perturbations into a complex system, searching for the resonant frequency that will cause it to tip in your favor. This leads us to pattern recognition. The outcomes of these chaotic systems are not truly random. They are deterministic and follow intricate patterns. The engagement curve of a piece of content, for instance, displays fractal geometry. A fractal is a pattern that repeats itself at every scale of magnification. The hidden insight here is that the shape of your engagement graph in the first 60 seconds contains the same fundamental mathematical pattern as the shape of its engagement over the first 60 hours. There is a genetic code in the initial interaction that predicts its entire life cycle. The hack is to learn to read this code in real time. This is phase space mapping. You are not just looking at the number of likes. You are watching the velocity of their accumulation and, more importantly, the acceleration. You are mapping the curve. The Lorentz equations, which were originally used to model atmospheric convection, provide a model for this. They show that the system has specific tipping points where the trajectory can bifurcate, either collapsing into decay or entering a viral growth loop. In practical terms, this means watching the real-time analytics of a new post with the intensity of a day trader watching stock tickers. If you see the signature of a positive fractal pattern emerging in the first 90 seconds, a specific type of accelerating curve, you must immediately and aggressively amplify that initial state. This is where you pour in your resources, you activate your engagement pods, you send it to your core community on a separate platform, you put a micro burst of paid spend behind it. You are adding energy to the system at the exact moment of its maximum sensitivity. If, however, you see the signature of a decay pattern, a linear or decelerating curve, you kill it. You archive or delete the post immediately. You do not let it poison your dataset. You then redeploy one of your other initial condition stacks. This is ruthless, real-time portfolio management of chaotic assets. Now let us address the special focus. How you, as women creators, can uniquely identify and leverage these chaotic principles for exponential growth. The digital landscape, like many systems, is often rigidly structured by historical biases. These structures create predictable, linear pathways to success that are often dominated by established players with massive resources. They operate with brute force. Chaos is the weapon of the agile. It is the asymmetric advantage. The established powers rely on the stability of the system. You will profit from its instability. The first lever is emotional resonance. The strange attractors that govern the cultural phase space are almost always emotional in nature. The ability to perceive, understand, and articulate nuanced emotional states is a profound strategic advantage. While brute force marketing relies on broad, lowest common denominator emotions, the most powerful butterfly effects are triggered by highly specific, resonant, and often unarticulated emotional currents. The hack is to weaponize your emotional intelligence. Conduct a zeitgeist emotional audit. What is the specific underlying emotional tension of your niche right now? Is it the anxiety of economic uncertainty, the frustration with performative activism, the longing for quiet authenticity? You will then craft content that serves as a tuning fork for that exact emotional frequency. You will provide the vocabulary and validation for an emotion that the community is feeling but has not yet named. This creates a moment of profound recognition that acts as a powerful initial perturbation, a butterfly wing flap with enormous chaotic potential. The second lever is the strategic use of niche communities as chaos laboratories. Large creators are a victim of their own scale. Their audience is too large and diverse, which dampens the signal of any chaotic experiment. Their initial conditions are always noisy. Women creators often excel at cultivating smaller, highly engaged, high-trust communities. Do not view this as a liability. View it as your single greatest strategic asset. Your niche community is a controlled environment, a laboratory for testing initial condition stacks. The feedback is faster, the signal-to-noise ratio is higher, and the cost of failure is lower. You can test 7 or 8 different butterfly wing flaps, different posting times, caption hooks, and comment strategies on a small, forgiving audience in a single day. You are iterating on the initial conditions, not the content. When you identify a stack that produces a disproportionately positive fractal pattern within that niche lab, you have found your hurricane trigger. That is the moment you take that exact set of initial conditions and deploy it to a broader audience or amplify it with paid spend. You are not guessing what will work. You are exporting a proven chaotic ignition sequence from a controlled environment into the wild. This is how you bypass the linear, brute force game and engage directly with the fundamental physics of virality. You stop trying to push the boulder up the hill and instead learn to start the avalanche with a single, perfectly placed whisper. You are not building a brand. You are not managing a community. You are architecting a tribe. Every principle of modern marketing that treats your audience as a collection of rational consumers to be persuaded is a dangerous fallacy. Your audience is a troop of primates, running a billion-year-old social operating system, searching for belonging, hierarchy, and meaning in a digital jungle. The algorithms that govern this jungle are not neutral arbiters of quality. They are ruthless environments that select for one thing and one thing only: the most effective tribal leader. They measure the strength of your tribe by the intensity of its rituals, the devotion of its followers, and the clarity of its symbols. To succeed in this environment is to discard the language of marketing and embrace the far older, far more powerful language of anthropology. We are here to decode the architecture of digital tribalism and understand the evolutionary psychology that drives parasocial relationships, not so we can participate in it, but so we can engineer it to our own ends. The fundamental product you are creating is not content, it is the illusion of intimacy. This is the core of the parasocial relationship, a one-sided, emotionally resonant bond that a follower forms with a creator. From an evolutionary perspective, our brains are not equipped to distinguish between a real-world relationship and a simulated one delivered through a screen. We use the same neural hardware. A creator who shares their vulnerabilities, speaks directly to the camera, and reveals personal details is hijacking this ancient system, simulating the cues of a trusted, high-status member of our immediate kin group. The hidden insight is that this parasocial bond is more valuable and more retentive than any piece of content you could ever produce. The content is merely the delivery mechanism for the emotional and psychological signals that build the relationship. The hack, therefore, is to shift your focus from content production to parasocial architecture. You must strategically design every element of your digital presence to accelerate and deepen this bond. This is achieved through intimacy signaling. These signals include establishing a shared secret language or lexicon unique to your tribe, creating digital totems, which are recurring symbols, emojis, or catchphrases that signify in-group membership, and most potently, the calculated performance of authentic vulnerability. This is not random oversharing. It is the strategic disclosure of struggles and flaws, which signals trust and invites the audience into a perceived inner circle, transforming them from passive viewers into emotionally invested pseudo-confidants. This brings us to the mathematical constraint of your tribe: Dunbar's number. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed that the human brain has a cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships, a number he pegged at roughly 150. Anyone who tells you to treat all your followers equally is giving you biologically illiterate advice. Chasing infinite scale is a fool's errand that leads to a diffuse, weak, and algorithmically invisible audience. The master strategist does not fight Dunbar's number. She weaponizes it. The hidden insight is that the algorithmic platforms do not measure the size of your audience as much as they measure the density of its core. A tribe of 1,000 with a hyper-engaged core of 150 will outperform a community of 100,000 passive followers in almost every metric that matters. The hack is to build your audience in concentric circles, mirroring Dunbar's natural layers. Your goal is to identify and cultivate your inner council of 5 to 15 true fans, your core tribe of 150 active participants, and your outer sympathizers of 500. For your inner council, you provide unprecedented access and direct interaction. For your core tribe, you facilitate group rituals and build horizontal connections between them. For the outer layers, you provide high-status signals and aspirational content. By focusing your energy on strengthening the bonds within your core 150, you create a gravitational center so dense that its social proof radiates outward, pulling new members into orbit and signaling to the algorithm that you are not just a creator, you are a center of a powerful social universe. The primary mechanism for strengthening these bonds and demonstrating the vitality of your tribe is ritual. Your comment section is not a forum for discussion. It is a ceremonial space. Every like, every comment, every share is a small act of ritual participation that affirms the follower's identity within the tribe and their relationship to you, the leader. The hidden insight is that the most successful content is not merely consumed. It is used as a scaffold for collective ritual. When you see a comment section exploding with the same repeated phrase or emoji, you are not witnessing a conversation. You are witnessing a tribe performing a digital ceremony to reinforce its collective identity, its communitas. The hack is ritual engineering. You must deliberately design your content to be a catalyst for ritual behavior. This can be as simple as ending every piece of content with a unique sign-off that your tribe then ritually repeats in the comments. It can involve creating content formats that act as a call and response, prompting specific, predictable, and unified engagement. You are creating a liturgy. By providing these simple ritualistic structures, you give your followers a low-effort way to perform their membership, strengthen their bond, and collectively generate a massive, algorithmically potent signal of tribal coherence. They are not just commenting on your post. They are participating in a sacred act of belonging. Finally, we must address the archetype of the tribal leader in this new landscape. The old model of the distant, polished, invulnerable authority figure is dead. It is a relic of a broadcast era. In the interactive, intimate, and chaotic digital space, a new leadership model has emerged as dominant, and it is an archetype that women creators are uniquely positioned to embody, the vulnerable alpha. This leader combines two seemingly contradictory signals, high status and authentic vulnerability. The hidden insight is that in a world of performative perfection, vulnerability has become the most powerful and costly signal of status. It communicates an unshakable confidence and a deep trust in one's tribe, effectively saying, "I am so secure in my position that I can afford to show you my flaws." However, this must be calibrated perfectly. Vulnerability without status is just complaining. Status without vulnerability is alienating. The hack is the status-vulnerability pair. You must learn to strategically pair every disclosure of weakness with a demonstration of strength. For example, "I was completely overwhelmed and burnt out last week." Vulnerability. "So I systemized my entire workflow, built a new productivity template, and here it is for you." Status and value. Or, "I used to be terrified of public speaking." Vulnerability. "And now I'm keynoting a major industry conference." Status. This calibrated pairing creates a powerful magnetic pull. The vulnerability creates a deep parasocial bond of relatability, while the status creates aspiration and respect. The audience feels that you are both like them and what they want to become. This is the core dynamic of the modern digital tribe, and the woman creator who masters this delicate, potent alchemy of authentic vulnerability and strategic status signaling will not just lead a tribe, she will command an army. The platforms you operate on are not social networks. They are secular cathedrals. The human organism is hardwired for ritual, for sacred experience, for moments of transformation that lift it out of the profane, meaningless chaos of everyday existence. For millennia, this need was met by religion, by ceremony, by the tribe's shaman. In a world stripped of these structures, that primal aching need has not vanished. It has migrated. It has migrated into the digital ether. Your followers are not consumers or users. They are a congregation, starved for meaning, and they are unconsciously seeking spaces where they can undergo a ritual of transformation. The most powerful and influential creators are not those with the best content or the slickest production. They are those who have instinctively or deliberately understood their true function. They are the new high priests and priestesses, the digital shamans. Their job is not to inform or entertain, but to consecrate space, to facilitate ceremony, and to guide their followers through a transformative rite of passage. Today we move beyond the anthropology of the tribe and into the anthropology of its soul. We will decode the structure of ritual theory, and provide you with the framework to stop being a content creator and start becoming a digital shaman. The foundational blueprint for this process was laid out over a century ago by the anthropologist Arnold van Gennep. In his analysis of tribal societies, he discovered that all rites of passage from birth to death, from childhood to adulthood, share a universal three-part structure: separation, liminality, and incorporation. This is not an academic theory. This is the hidden architecture behind every powerful brand story, every compelling narrative, and every high-conversion funnel. It is the operating system of human transformation, and you will now learn to engineer it. The first stage is separation. Your audience exists in the profane world of the infinite scroll, a chaotic, undifferentiated stream of noise. Your first task is not to get their attention, but to perform a ritual act of separation. Your hook must be a sacred bell, a call to prayer that signals to the viewer's subconscious that they are about to leave the ordinary world and enter a special, consecrated one. This is achieved not just with a clever line, but with consistent ritualistic cues. A specific sound that begins all your videos, a unique hand gesture, a recurring visual element, a direct address that shatters the fourth wall. These are the tools of separation. You are drawing a magical circle around your content. The hidden insight is this: the scroll fosters a state of hypnotic indifference. A powerful act of separation jolts the brain out of this state and into one of heightened presence and expectation. You are not just stopping a thumb, you are initiating a ceremony. The follower must feel, even if unconsciously, that they have crossed a threshold. The second and most crucial stage is liminality. This is the sacred space you, the creator, must hold. The liminal state, as Van Gennep defined it, is a state of being betwixt and between. It is a period of ambiguity and disorientation where the old identity is suspended, but the new one has not yet been formed. This is where transformation happens. 99% of creators fail here. They provide information, which is a profane commodity. They do not induce a liminal state. The goal of your core content is to create a temporary, controlled crisis of identity or understanding in your viewer. You must challenge their assumptions, disrupt their worldview, present a paradox, or evoke a powerful, unresolved emotion. This is the wilderness, the vision quest, the dark night of the soul, rendered in digital form. The hack is to structure your content not as a linear explanation, but as a journey through this liminal space. You present a problem that seems unsolvable, suspension of old identity. You explore the struggle and the confusion, disorientation, and you guide them towards a new revelation, the potential for a new identity. This is where your audience is most open, most vulnerable, and most receptive to a new way of being. They are cognitive and emotional clay in your hands. You are not giving them 5 tips. You are dissolving their reality and preparing them to be remade. The final stage is incorporation. After the ordeal of the liminal space, the initiate must be brought back into the world, reborn with a new status, a new identity, a new understanding. This is your call to action, but it must be reframed. A traditional call to action, buy my product, is a profane request that shatters the sacred space you have just created. The ritual call to action is an act of incorporation. It is the final ceremonial gesture that solidifies the follower's transformation and integrates them into the tribe with their new identity. A comment is not a comment. It is a public testimony. A like is not a metric. It is an amen. A share is not distribution. It is an act of evangelism, proclaiming their newfound belief to the world. The hack is to frame your calls to action in this ritualistic language. If this resonated, share this with one person who needs to hear it. Is not a request for reach. It is an instruction for proselytizing. Comment with your own story of transformation is not a request for engagement. It is an invitation to join the congregation. By doing this, you transform a marketing tactic into the meaningful conclusion of a sacred ceremony, allowing the follower to perform their new identity and solidify the very transformation your content just provided. Within this ritual structure, you must cultivate the lifeblood of the tribe, communitas. This is a term from anthropologist Victor Turner, describing the intense, shared emotional state that arises during the liminal phase of a ritual. It is a moment of profound unity where individual identities dissolve into a feeling of oneness with the collective. This, not engagement, is your ultimate goal. It is the digital equivalent of what the sociologist Emile Durkheim called collective effervescence, the ecstatic energy felt during tribal ceremonies. The hidden insight is that communitas is the most powerful social glue on the planet, creating a bond of loyalty that transcends any rational calculation. Your comment section is the engine for generating it. The hack is to design your content as an unfinished ritual that requires the collective participation of the tribe to be completed. You achieve this by asking questions that tap into universal archetypes and shared emotional memory. You create inside jokes and totemic symbols that act as passwords into this state of collective being. You even stoke benign, controlled conflict within the tribe, allowing for the passionate expression of belief that generates enormous emotional energy. You are not hosting a conversation. You are orchestrating a collective emotional apotheosis. This leads us to your ultimate role, the one for which women creators are so uniquely and powerfully suited, the digital shaman. The shaman's traditional role was not one of authority, but of service. The shaman journeyed into the liminal world, the spirit world, on behalf of the tribe. She faced disorientation and danger to retrieve a boon, a piece of knowledge, a healing, a vision, and then returned to share it. This is a direct model for the most resonant form of creative leadership today. The hack is to structure your entire content strategy as a shamanic journey arc. First is the descent. You publicly and vulnerably journey into a problem, a pain point, a complex and confusing topic that plagues your community. You are their proxy, descending into the underworld for them. Second is the ordeal. You document the struggle. You share the process, the setbacks, the moments of confusion and despair. You are performing your journey through the liminal space, and in doing so, you are holding a liminal space for your audience to process their own struggles. Third is the return. You emerge from the ordeal, not necessarily with a perfect solution, but with a boon. The boon is the insight, the framework, the new perspective, the hard-won wisdom. Finally, and most critically, there is the gift. You present this boon to your tribe. It is not a product to be sold. It is a sacred gift that validates their own struggle and offers a path to their own transformation. This arc positions you not as an influencer peddling a lifestyle, but as a genuine facilitator of your community's healing and growth. You are not showing them your highlight reel. You are sharing the scars of a journey you took for them. This is the deepest form of value creation, and it engenders a level of devotion that turns followers into disciples. It is the ultimate rite of passage for both your audience and for you, as you shed the profane identity of creator and assume the sacred role you were meant to play. Ritual theory and digital ceremonies. Creating sacred spaces in secular platforms. When we think about rituals, our minds often leap to religion, temples, weddings, funerals, the great cycles of human life marked with ceremony. Yet, the very same anthropological frameworks that shaped how humans constructed sacred spaces are now quietly operating inside TikTok feeds, Instagram lives, and YouTube premieres. Arnold van Gennep's theory of rites of passage remains as alive in these spaces as it was in the villages he studied, because the human nervous system has not evolved beyond ritual. It has only shifted where ritual manifests. Every comment section, every hashtag challenge, every live stream countdown is a digital altar, a gathering place where repetition, rhythm, and symbolic gestures transform a cold, algorithmic feed into something resembling a chapel. Consider first the liminal space, that in-between threshold Van Gennep mapped so carefully. In traditional societies, initiation rituals moved participants from one status to another, child to adult, single to married, outsider to insider. In the digital ecosystem, the liminal occurs every time a user steps into a live stream. The moment before the stream starts, the waiting room chat scrolls rapidly with anticipation. People send emojis, hearts, prayers, claps, memes, and GIFs. These function like chants and drumming in tribal ceremonies. They suspend ordinary time and open a portal. The platform itself becomes a liminal chamber where 1,000 strangers are bonded in the shared expectation that something transformative will occur when the screen shifts from countdown to presence. But liminality alone is not enough. Rituals require communitas, that sense of intense shared experience beyond hierarchy, beyond normal divisions. In the ancient world, initiates bound by ritual felt they were equals before the gods. Online, communitas emerges when creators orchestrate engagement so participants feel dissolved into the flow. It is why synchronized posting schedules matter, why music and rhythms trend, why viral dances function less as entertainment and more as sacramental gestures of belonging. Each repetition strengthens the bond, and each bond increases the gravitational field around the creator. In these moments, the creator is not just producing content, she is holding sacred space, even if no one consciously recognizes it as such. Now ask, how does repetition shape sacredness? In anthropology, repetition is not redundancy, it is consecration. To repeat the chant is to weave it into the nervous system. To repeat the gesture is to carve it into muscle memory. Online, repetition takes the form of hashtags recycled across posts, intros used at the beginning of every video, familiar catchphrases that followers can recite before the creator even says them. The ritual rhythm is what converts noise into meaning, chaos into order, audience into congregation. Without rhythm, the algorithm fragments. With rhythm, it binds. This points to the deeper truth. Secular platforms can be made sacred through symbolic architecture. The sacred geometry that once adorned temples is now mirrored in interface design. The square grid of Instagram, the circular loop of TikTok's For You page, the pulsing heart icon that signals collective affirmation. Each click is a digital prayer bead, each like a rosary. The algorithms are not neutral. They are priests translating human ritual into quantifiable engagement. And the creators who intuitively understand this become digital shamans, guiding their followers through symbolic ceremonies disguised as content. Women creators, in particular, have a profound asymmetrical advantage here. Anthropology teaches us that ritual authority often arises not from brute force but from symbolic fluency, from the ability to mediate between chaos and order. When a woman creator constructs a ritual space, a morning routine vlog that her audience repeats daily, a Friday night live stream that becomes tradition, a call-and-response comment pattern where followers echo her words, she is not just engaging her audience, she is inducting them into a cultic rhythm. And cult here does not mean sinister. It means culture, cultivation, the binding of people into a shared symbolic universe. The stronger the ritual framework, the harder it is for followers to leave, because leaving is no longer about clicking away. It is about apostasy. Notice also the symbolic substitutions. In tribal settings, one might paint the body or wear masks. Online, the mask is the avatar, the profile picture, the chosen emoji. Followers mark themselves with the creator's totems, her slang, her symbols, her memes, just as tribes once wore colors or animal skins. The digital ceremony thrives on these markers because they allow for visible signs of allegiance. Without such markers, the communitas dissolves into the anonymity of the internet. With them, it becomes a tribe. What emerges is a framework for digital shamanism. The creator is no longer just a broadcaster but a ritual specialist, a mediator between the unseen algorithm and the visible community. She interprets the mysteries of the feed, why certain posts hit and others do not. She sacrifices her time, her body, her image, offering them as ritual objects for collective transformation. She chants through repeated catchphrases, dances through repeated gestures, anoints through giveaways or shoutouts. And the audience, in return, experiences not just entertainment but belonging, catharsis, transcendence. They leave the ritual altered, even if subtly, feeling they are part of something larger. The danger, of course, lies in the inversion of sacredness. Rituals always risk decay into empty repetition, where the gesture loses its meaning but the body continues to perform. In the digital realm, this is burnout. Creators who keep posting rituals that once held magic but are now hollow. The challenge is to continually re-enchant the ceremony, to inject novelty while preserving rhythm, to keep communitas alive without allowing it to ossify. Those who succeed can create sacred digital spaces that endure, rivaling churches in loyalty and intensity. Those who fail see their ceremonies collapse into forgotten hashtags, abandoned channels, ghost towns of meaning. Thus, the task for the modern strategist is clear. Do not merely create content, create ceremony. Understand that audiences are not just viewers but participants in rites of passage, traveling with you through liminal thresholds, communitas bonds, and symbolic rhythms. Recognize the mystical function of repetition, the power of digital totems, the algorithm as high priest. And above all, learn to hold sacred space in secular platforms, because in a world stripped of temples, the new sanctuaries are comment sections, the new priests are creators, and the new ceremonies are scrolling endlessly, seeking moments of transcendence disguised as memes. Network topology and social capital distribution. Power law dynamics in creator economies. When you open your phone and see a social feed, it looks flat, an endless list of posts, one after another, seemingly equal. But beneath the surface, the structure is anything but flat. It is jagged, unequal, asymmetrical. Network topology governs everything. Social capital does not distribute itself evenly. It bends itself into hubs, into clusters, into power nodes. And if you are a creator, especially a woman navigating a saturated digital environment, understanding these invisible structures is the difference between obscurity and influence. Let us begin with the shape of networks. Mathematically, many digital networks follow a power law. That means a small number of nodes, accounts, creators, influencers, hoard the majority of attention, while the vast majority receive little. Think of Instagram. A handful of celebrities draw hundreds of millions, while the average account struggles to surpass a few hundred. This is not an accident. It is a property of preferential attachment, a principle first articulated in network theory. The rich get richer, not because of quality alone, but because connections beget more connections. Preferential attachment is brutal, but predictable. Once an account begins to accumulate followers, the likelihood of further growth increases non-linearly. This is why timing matters so much in early content drops. A single viral moment can tilt the structural balance and lock you into hub status. After that, the algorithm bends toward you, positioning you as a central node. But here is the hidden asymmetry. Not all growth is equal. A hub positioned at the wrong part of the network, too isolated, too niche, can grow large but remain strategically weak. The true advantage comes from being at the intersection of clusters, where you connect disparate audiences who would otherwise never meet. This is where Ronald Burt's theory of structural holes enters. A structural hole is a gap between two groups that do not speak to each other. Whoever bridges that hole gains disproportionate power. Imagine being the creator who connects wellness influencers with fintech entrepreneurs, or K-pop fandoms with climate activists. You suddenly hold leverage because you are the translator, the bridge, the one whose content travels across otherwise disconnected worlds. Women creators who position themselves as these boundary spanners do not need the largest numbers. They gain asymmetric advantage through location in the network. Now consider centrality. Degree centrality measures how many direct connections you have. Betweenness centrality measures how often you lie on the shortest path between others. Eigenvector centrality measures not just your connections, but the importance of those you are connected to. Platforms, consciously or unconsciously, reward eigenvector centrality. If you are followed by people who themselves are highly followed, your influence multiplies. This is why collaborations, duets, and cross-posts matter so much. They are not just about exposure, they are about plugging into the eigenvector of the digital web. Small world networks add another layer. Research shows that in most social platforms, any two individuals are connected through a surprisingly short chain of intermediaries, often 6 or fewer. Virality emerges when content exploits these short paths. A meme that jumps quickly from one cluster to another through a weak tie. An acquaintance, a casual follower, can ripple across the entire system at speed. Strong ties build trust. Weak ties build spread. Women creators who cultivate not just close-knit audiences, but also wide lattices of casual weak ties maximize their viral surface area. Social capital itself fractures into types. Bonding capital comes from tight communities, loyal, engaged, emotionally invested. Bridging capital comes from loose ties that open new opportunities and expose you to diverse audiences. Both are necessary. Too much bonding capital, and you become trapped in an echo chamber. Too much bridging capital, and you lack loyalty. The masterful creator oscillates between the two, building deep rituals with her core audience while simultaneously throwing content across boundaries to recruit new tribes. Do not ignore the hidden geometry of algorithmic amplification. Algorithms themselves function as network accelerants. They privilege nodes that already demonstrate centrality. They identify clusters and feed content into echo chambers, but also occasionally test content in distant clusters to see if it tunnels through. For the creator, this means strategy cannot just be about producing good content. It must be about placing yourself in the right topology so that when the algorithm tests you, you have the chance to bridge clusters and achieve disproportionate reach. And finally, remember this. Networks evolve. Hubs can decay. Bridges can collapse. A once central influencer can become peripheral if they fail to refresh their weak ties and remap their place in the system. Vigilance is survival. For women creators building in digital economies, the topology is not fixed. It is an ever-shifting battlefield of nodes and edges. The hidden power is in seeing the map, not just the surface. To understand who connects to whom, where the gaps lie, where the structural holes open, and how to occupy those liminal spaces where attention leaks from one world into another. This is not content strategy. This is network shamanism. To place yourself in the right topology is to harness the hidden laws of power distribution. To understand power law dynamics is to stop playing checkers in a flat field and start playing chess on a three-dimensional web. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The feed is not equal. The network is not neutral. The economy of influence is a cathedral built of nodes, and only those who learn its architecture will rise to the altar. Prospect theory and loss aversion in content consumption, framing effects for maximum engagement. Every time a human being scrolls a feed, they are not just looking at information, they are making micro bets. Each tap, each second of attention is a wager. Will this content reward me, or will I feel that I have lost time, lost relevance, lost standing in the social order? This is why Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's prospect theory, originally built for economics, becomes a hidden architecture for digital platforms. People are irrational, but predictably so. They fear losses more than they crave gains. And in content strategy, this asymmetry is not a minor detail, it is the engine. Loss aversion is the silent governor of engagement. When someone fears they will miss out, when they sense they might lose social standing, lose inside knowledge, lose a chance at belonging, they act. This is why scarcity and urgency work so well. Only 24 hours left. Limited edition. You had to be here. Even though the digital world is infinite, the human brain is still wired for the scarcity of the ancestral savanna. A missed chance feels heavier than a new opportunity. For women creators, the question is, how do you harness this without exploiting it? How do you frame content so that each piece feels like a chance to avoid loss rather than merely a chance to gain? The endowment effect reinforces this. Once someone follows you, once they engage even briefly, they feel ownership. They do not want to give it up. This is why follower retention often surpasses follower acquisition in importance. It is easier to keep a person than to win them back after they have decided you are irrelevant. A story highlight, a saved playlist, a recurring newsletter. These are not just artifacts. They are psychological hooks. By giving your audience something they can feel they own, you activate their fear of losing it. Framing becomes everything. The same piece of content can be perceived as opportunity or as risk. Say you share an article titled 10 Ways to Grow Your Audience. That is framed as gain. But if you instead post 10 mistakes that are killing your audience growth, the second framing will often outperform the first, not because the information is better, but because the framing exploits loss aversion. The psychology of digital audiences is tilted. Avoiding pain feels more urgent than seeking pleasure. Now add gender into the mix. Research shows that women, on average, display greater risk sensitivity in certain domains. Female creators often intuitively design content with higher empathy for loss, with keener sensitivity to what the audience fears missing, losing, or mismanaging. This becomes a tactical advantage. When used consciously, it allows female strategists to frame messages in ways that generate both urgency and trust, not simply clickbait anxiety. Social proof multiplies this effect. Nobody wants to be the one left behind. When an audience sees that others are already participating, already liking, already commenting, the perceived loss of not joining intensifies. The digital crowd becomes the mirror against which individual loss is measured. A post with 0 comments feels risky. Why waste my time? A post with 5,000 comments feels like a threat of exclusion. If I do not join, I am the outsider. Prospect theory plays out not only in the mind of the individual, but in the architecture of collective psychology. And timing, always timing. The psychology of immediate versus delayed gratification, what behavioral economists call temporal discounting, intersects with loss aversion. A piece of content that offers immediate avoidance of loss will nearly always outperform one that promises distant gain. Watch now so you don't miss the announcement. Click today to save your seat. These are not empty phrases. They are psychological triggers rooted in the asymmetric weight of loss. But here is the deeper, more unsettling truth. Platforms themselves are built on the back of loss aversion. Notifications are structured like small alarms, constantly hinting at potential loss of connection, loss of recognition, loss of social standing. The red badge icon is not random. Red is a color of danger. The number count is not random. It signals accumulation that could be lost if ignored. Every platform is a casino of loss avoidance, training the brain to respond before it even processes why. For women digital strategists, mastery here does not mean manipulation. It means fluency. To know that your audience is governed by fear of loss is to know how to respect their psychology, to build trust while still invoking urgency, to create call to actions that feel protective rather than predatory, to show your audience not just what they could gain, but what they would miss if they stayed passive. Think of it as asymmetric leverage. Gains are weak motivators, losses are strong ones. But the creator who learns how to frame losses not as threats, but as guardianship. I don't want you to miss this. I don't want you to lose this chance. I don't want you to waste effort on mistakes. That creator becomes a steward of attention, not just a siphon of it. And that is what builds longevity. Because in the end, an audience does not only remember what they gained from you, they remember what you helped them not to lose.